Welcome to Roots and Resistance, the podcast where anthropology students come together to discuss trending topics and articles regarding indigenous issues in the anthropology community. I'm your host, Aidan. Joining me on this episode are my peers, Simon, Carly, Camden, and Joe. Today we're exploring an article titled Sense of Place, the Displacement of a First Nations Community in Canada. The article is written by cultural anthropologist Deborah Davis Jackson. Jackson specializes in Indigenous communities across Canada and the United States, with a focus on identity, environmental injustices, and issues of aging. Since 2007, her research has expanded to examine the effects of industrial production and waste on workers, community residents, and farming communities. She has been a tenured professor at Earlham College since 2000, where she has pioneered new courses in anthropology and environmental studies. In 2019, she transitioned into the role of research professor to continue her impactful work. In Sense of Place, Jackson focuses on the Aamjiwnaang First Nation, an Indigenous community facing severe environmental challenges at the hands of industrialization. The article delves into the past, present, and future conditions of Aamjiwnaang, the community's unique smell profile, and the alarming health effects linked to industrial pollution. Through fieldwork in Aamjiwnaang, Jackson sheds light on the lived experiences of community members and their relationship to their land. Up next, Simon will be speaking about the relationship between industry and the Aamjiwnaang community. Simon, please tell us, how did this relationship between industry and the Aamjiwnaang begin, and what was the aftermath?
The aftermath of the Aamjiwnaang First Nation Reserve in Chemical Valley is the displacement of the Indigenous inhabitants of the area.
How did this relationship between industry and the Aamjiwnaang begin?
The town of Sarnia in Ontario was first settled. The government made promises to protect a certain area for the Indigenous people, but over the years, this reserve was slowly sold off to industrial production, making the region a heavily concentrated polluted area, polluting their water, soil, and air, taking away their way of life, such as fishing in the now polluted rivers, hunting, medicine gathering, and ceremonial activities. This Indigenous group found a sense of identity in their sense of smell, with certain smells, like those from their traditional activities, masked by the pungent smell of chemicals coming from the various surrounding industrial plants.
How did all this chemical pollution affect people physically? Were there any major health concerns?
Unfortunately, there were several health concerns. During a 2005 meeting, it was revealed that every household on the reserve reported members with asthma, arthritis, learning disabilities, skin rashes, or cancer. Other sources suggested reproductive harm associated with higher rates of miscarriages and stillbirths.
This was also taking place during a time where residential schools were common throughout Canada. How severely was the Aamjiwnaang community affected by residential schools?
And unfortunately, in addition to the shrinking reserve and the growing industrial pollution, the Aamjiwnaang First Nation also experienced the same effects from residential schools as the majority of Canada. Children being taken away from their families and communities further displaced the population, taking away their sense of identity and irreparably damaging the youth of the Aamjiwnaang community. Carly, how does Jackson express the cultural aspects of smell in the article?
This article explores how Aamjiwnaang residents grieve the loss of their once familiar smell of home being replaced with chemical toxic odors. Scents once associated with traditions and culture have been displaced.
You really have to be there to understand the extent of the pollution. Jackson reported a distinct paint smell, despite the people of Aamjiwnaang seeing this as their normal life. How does this affect them not only physically, but spiritually?
The Aamjiwnaang Reserve is surrounded by the Chemical Valley, an industrial area containing many refineries. Toxic emissions have spewed out of these refineries, producing a strong chemical scent, taking over the maple tree sap, open fire, and savory smells this community no longer experiences. Quote, smells may be spatially ordered and place-related, quote. Residents of Aamjiwnaang now have a feeling of displacement. Although they are living in their community still, they do not feel like this is their home as the smell has been stripped from them. The sense of place has been altered because of the sense of smell, thus leaving them alienated. The once smell of positive memories of family and a sense of community is now intolerable and even dangerous. These toxic scents are causing residents a feeling of disconnected and isolated in their own community. The horrid odors they experience every day trigger anxiety, leaving them with a sense of helplessness and a fear their home, which they've known for decades, is being slowly destroyed. The place they call home is becoming associated with negative perceptions of unbearable smells of pollution, causing residents to experience constant anxiety, living with these negative thoughts as well as in fear of experiencing health conditions. The sense of smell plays an important role in the relevance of a community's culture and belonging. The overtaking of stench in this reserve is causing people to suffer from the feeling of homesickness one gets while still at home. Jackson has conducted fieldwork in this community and experienced these awful scents firsthand.
Thank you, Carly. Up next, Camden will be explaining what Jackson's experience was like working in and with the Aamjiwnaang community. Camden, explain what fieldwork was like for Jackson in Aamjiwnaang.
Deborah Davis Jackson completed 6 months of ethnographic and archival research at the Aamjiwnaang First Nations Reserve, located in Ontario's Chemical Valley. Over 6 months, she immersed herself in the daily lives of Aamjiwnaang residents, capturing their experiences through ethnographic and archival research. She attended meetings, communities, events, and interviewed residents familiar with the environmental conditions and health issues they were facing. She also participated in activities such as strategy meetings and toxic tours to gain a deeper understanding of the pollution problems in the area. During her fieldwork, she discovered a community deeply affected by industrial pollution. Residents expressed frustration and dismay over the health problems linked to the toxic environment. Despite the challenges, Jackson observed the resilience and determination of Aamjiwnaang residents to stay and fight for their homeland. One striking revelation was the residents' evolving relationship with their environment. Historically, the local smellscape reinforced a sense of belonging and identity. The fragrances of wild ginger, peppermint, and maple syrup signified home and comfort. However, as toxic fumes began to pervade the air, these once positive associations have turned into a profound sense of alienation, a condition Jackson terms displacement. Through his semiotic framework, drawing from Charles Sanders Peirce, Jackson explored how the perception of odors deeply embodies the connection between self and surroundings. The constant presence of toxic odors infiltrates daily life, impacting health and well-being, while also evoking powerful memories and emotions. Despite the adverse effects, the community's resilience is evident, as many choose to stay and fight rather than relocate. Joe, do you want to wrap it all up for us?
To conclude, Deborah Davis Jackson emphasizes the profound significance that Chemical Valley smell had on the lived experience of the First Nations community in Sarnia, as over time, the ingrained scent in the ground has evolved into a crucial symbol of location and cultural identity. Jackson's fieldwork significantly advanced our understanding of how environmental degradation can disrupt not only the physical, but also the emotional and spiritual ties between Indigenous peoples and their land. The smell of Chemical Valley is crucial to Indigenous identity because of its sensory connection to the land, which is why the toxic emissions not only harm their health, but also sever their emotional and spiritual bonds to the land they once inhabited. Jackson's research has raised awareness of the terrible consequences of industrial contamination, especially in the Chemical Valley, where the community's displacement resulted in the loss of customs and cultural heritage. Her fieldwork not only revealed the chemical industry's terrible environmental impacts in Sarnia, but also gave Indigenous voices a platform to advocate for more acknowledgement from their lived experiences. Chemical Valley continues to struggle with the long-term effects of industrial pollution today, and the nearby Indigenous communities continue to face environmental and health issues. Despite this, Jackson's work continues to make a substantial impact on the topic about Indigenous rights and environmental justice by increasing awareness and promoting discussions about reclamation and healing. By documenting the experiences of a displaced community and amplifying their voices, Jackson has provided a powerful tool for Indigenous communities to challenge environmental policies and advocate for the restoration and protection of their ancestral lands. The lasting legacy of her fieldwork has empowered further studies and advocacy efforts for the preservation of Indigenous communities' cultural and environmental well-being. On behalf of our team, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the Aamjiwnaang community for allowing us the opportunity to speak on the challenges facing the Chemical Valley, as well as to Deborah Davis Jackson for immersing herself within the community. Their strength and resiliency for advocating for the health and well-being of the future generations of Aamjiwnaang people is truly inspiring. We are honored to support your efforts and remain hopeful for a brighter, healthier future for the community.